What's going on? Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. I'm out here recording October 15th on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Just me hanging out with you today. Tyler and Cameron are unavailable to join me, but that isn't going to stop me from bringing you another Stardom Saturday episode here for the fellas. Make sure you're following all of our socials. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on YouTube and TikTok. If you're watching a YouTube video right now, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Turn on those notifications for all sorts of daily fantasy football content all year long. You can follow me on Twitter as well, at Lucas Wenzel, W-E-N-C as in cat, L. I'm so used to spelling my last name for people. It's kind of an obscure last name. So there, now you know how to spell my last name. If you want to join a community full of league winners as well, make sure you head over to our Chalkboard. We are dropping rankings, waiver wire advice, trade advice, everything of the sorts over there. That is 100% free for you to join. You can come ask all of your questions. Our community will answer them. We'll pop in and answer them every once in a while as well. Down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to right now. We got a full episode, starts the week. Got lots of news to plow through here. We'll do some player props and rivals at the end with our friends over at Underdog. But first, per usual, we have to do a Thursday Night Football recap, and this is another one I don't want to do. I don't want to recap this Thursday night game. It was awful. It was bad. Second to last Thursday Night Football. Oh, it was brutal. Commanders win 12-9. I don't know how much you want me to say about this game. Okay, there were 3 takeaways for fantasy football I think we do need to talk about. But like everything else, toss it. This game is meaningless. Amazon just paid the NFL a buttload, and now they're going to throw whoever they want on Thursday Night Football, right? Like NFL already got their bag. They don't care who's playing on Thursday Night Football. Amazon's going to overpay for it. I saw this meme. I need to touch on this meme. I saw this meme on Facebook yesterday. If you've seen Grown Ups before, the movie Grown Ups, right, with Adam Sandler, all the great actors, right? Let me go through the whole list. But it's the 3 sisters, right, where there's the 2 that are deemed incredibly attractive, and then the one, ugly duckling, if you will, of the group, right? And then it's Monday Night Football and not Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football, and like NFL Sunday Football, and then the outsider one, the ugly duckling one being Thursday Night Football. I thought that was really funny. Anyways, that was a long way to get through that meme, but 3 big takeaways from Thursday Night Football. Normally I would ask questions here, right? We started doing 3 big questions after Thursday Night Football. We're not going to do that because I'm the only one here today. 3 big takeaways that I had. 1, Brian Robinson is confirmed as the running back 1 in Washington. 47% snap share on Thursday night, 27 total snaps. And on those 27 snaps, he saw 17 opportunities. So there was only 10 times that he was out on the field that he didn't touch the football. Let's compare that to J.D. McKissick's had 17 snaps. Gibson had 15. Like, no hesitation. Put Brian Robinson right back in. He only needed 1 week to get acclimated. It wouldn't surprise me if we see these snaps start to funnel more towards Brian Robinson. Even I think they'll probably want to keep it split between McKissick and Gibson for the most part. But Rivera hinted after the game too that they want to see Gibson out on the field more, so that could mean less work for McKissick. I mean, this is just a 3-headed monster. Brian Robinson's, they would say, by a touchdown. Gibson was the highest scoring running back before that Brian Robinson touchdown. Gibson had 8.3 fantasy points. Before that touchdown, Brian Robinson was sitting at 6 points, right? So Gibson still almost was the highest scoring running back on this team. It's tough to see which one of these running backs has the most value. I mean, you even look at efficiency for Brian Robinson, 17 for 60 and a touchdown, right? It's only 3.5 yards per attempt. You're mostly there, or you're mostly investing in Brian Robinson for the volume he's going to be getting, right? The efficiency will come. And he has a really nice schedule coming up too. Green Bay, Indianapolis, Minnesota, Philadelphia, Houston, Atlanta, and then the Giants. You don't love the matchup with Philadelphia. You don't love either Green Bay or Indianapolis, but I look at Minnesota, I look at Houston, Atlanta, and the Giants, and I really like those matchups for the Washington Commanders. So if you have Brian Robinson on your team, you got to feel good. especially after a 12-point performance in his first full game back on only 47% of the snaps. He didn't even play half of the snaps in the game, right? I'm feeling pretty good about that, and that game was just awful. So you can expect big things, continued big things from Brian Robinson going forward. Second takeaway, I think Darnell Mooney might be back. I think he might be back now. He's played at least 90% of the snaps in every game this year. He's gone over 50 yards in the past 3 games now, 50 receiving yards. That's not like a milestone marker, but when you're on the Bears and Justin Fields is your quarterback, I think we have to take note of that. And he finally saw more than 6 targets in a game this year. He saw 12 on Thursday Night Football. Finally, they let Justin Fields sling it around a little bit. 12 targets on Thursday Night Football. Dante Pettis, 18 fantasy points in PPR formats. Great night from Dante Pettis. I don't think you can count on that. But the point being is they're going to let Justin. It looks like they're more open to the idea of letting Justin Fields swing the ball around a bit more. I'm not. But here's the thing. Like, I'm not making major moves to go out and get like Darnell Mooney. Like, I'm not. If he's on my team, he's not untouchable. And if he's on my team, I'm not confidently starting him most weeks. That being said, if you're going out and trying to upgrade at a different position, one, I think you can package Darnell Mooney in a trade. I think there will be takers on Darnell Mooney who will not necessarily see him as an upgrade, but you can throw him in a trade package, and I think he's a valuable piece. And on the other hand, if you're looking to upgrade at a position and someone throws Darnell Mooney in a package, like, I wouldn't be afraid to take him on anymore. So I think we're getting a little bit of a resurgence, a little bit of a bounce back from Mooney. I don't think he's, top 25, 30 going ahead to the rest of the season, but I'm not afraid to take him on anymore. I'm not as scared as I once was about Darnell Mooney after the abysmal start to the season. And lastly, we got to talk about this wide receiver. On the other side of football, if you have Terry McLaurin on your fantasy football team, you need to get out from underneath him after this week. Like, need to get out from underneath Terry McLaurin. He cannot be on your team anymore. Sell him for name value. Sell him on the chance that someone will actually bite on him as the wide receiver 1 in Washington, right? Like, snap percentages have been great. Okay, they've been great. 95% in week 3, 98% the last 2 weeks. He's been on the field a ton. He's number 1 in routes run in the NFL. So he's on the field a ton. I believe he's number 2 in snap share. Number 1 in routes run. So he's on the field a ton, but his target numbers are putrid, people. So he's out on the field. That's great. That is great. But they are not looking at him at all. 6 targets in weeks 3 and 4. Only 4 targets on Thursday Night Football. He had a 16.2% target share going into Thursday Night Football. And he only had an 18% target share in a game that was close and they needed to score. This is a guy who should not have been drafted as high as a wide receiver 16 in most fantasy drafts this year. Like, people were saying Wentz was going to be this astronomical upgrade. Oh, he's so much better than Taylor Heineke. Are you kidding me? Terry's going to have a career year from Terry McLaurin. Wide receiver, top 15 wide receiver. People were ready, proclaiming that. And we're like, hold on. We've seen these middle of the pack quarterbacks switch teams to be an upgrade, right? An upgrade. Even Baker Mayfield to Carolina, right? Like, we've seen these slightly above lateral moves at the quarterback position for teams. And people are like, yes, stud wide receivers now are they were playing with crap and now they're not playing with crap. So they're going to be better. Like, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. You have to upgrade to an elite level quarterback in order to see your production go up to top 15 status, right? They only make a minimal impact, and that's what we've seen. We haven't seen Terry McLaurin make this leap. I'm not going to sit here and say Terry McLaurin has been awful. Okay, I believe he's a top 40 wide receiver, but listen to what I just said. A top 40, I believe he's a top 40 wide receiver. You did not draft him to be outside of the top 30. You did not do that. So I really hate taking midseason victory laps. They're one of my least favorite things in the world, but it sounds cocky, but on behalf of all of us fellas, we told you so. We told you so. Carson Wentz isn't that dude. He looked great the first couple of weeks, but even in those first couple of weeks, Terry McLaurin didn't give you top 15 production. And he's not going to going forward. He had a great a great opportunity to do it on Thursday night. And you know what he didn't do? Deliver. He didn't deliver for you. So you can get out from Terry McLaurin, get out from underneath Terry McLaurin ASAP as possible. Do it. that was our Thursday Night Football recap. And now, goodness, we have we have a whole plethora of news to go into here. I'm not going to be looking at the camera much during this next segment because I have a whole list of like 20 pieces of news I need to fly through. Let's move on to news and notes brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the number one fantasy football platform in the world. It's where literally we play all of our leagues. Only leagues I don't have on Sleeper are my guillotine leagues, and Sleeper could do guillotine leagues for you. So get over on Sleeper. You can join over 4 million people playing fantasy football over on Sleeper using the link down in the description of this audio podcast or YouTube video you are watching. Carson Wentz. While we're on Thursday Night Football still, kind of, sort of. We'll start with it since we ended with that. Carson Wentz, he suffered a fractured finger on his throwing hand in Thursday night's win over the Chicago Bears. He's headed to Los Angeles to see a hand specialist to determine, his next step. He's listed day-to-day at this point. That is per Ian Rappaport. Another reason you should get off from Terry McLaurin. Not to shift the news from Carson Wentz to Terry, but like, Exhibit B, right? Like, Carson Wentz, I think he can hit the waiver wires here at any point. He was a great streamer to start the year. Not feeling too good about Carson Wentz anymore. Tua Tagovailoa cleared concussion protocol yesterday, according to Adam Schefter. And let me get the full explanation here. He posted yesterday that he cleared, and obviously there wasn't going to be enough explanation within 140 characters on Twitter to explain this entire report. So give me a second here while I pull up the report with Tua from yesterday and read his entire note on it. Here we go. So per Adam Schefter, Tua Tagovailoa was cleared from concussion protocol today, this morning, as of 2 hours ago. He'll be inactive on Sunday versus the Vikings, but he's expected to return for Week 7 versus the Steelers. Here's the additional news. Since suffering a concussion in Week 4, Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins, and his team of independent doctors followed a thorough process that far exceeded the NFL's concussion protocol for sources. He received 4 outside opinions in addition to team doctors, who unanimously cleared him from protocol and all agreed that his scans showed no signs of long-term impact to the brain. This is a best-case scenario for the quarterback who was off to an impressive start of the 2022 season and is expected to return to action next week in Week 7. I leave it into the doctor's hands. I am not a medical professional. I know that what I saw when he was carted off the field was not good. I know that much, but I am not a medical professional. I do not. I at one point wanted to work in the medical field, but I do not have that expertise. I leave it in the hands of the professionals, and I will trust that the Miami Dolphins organization has not done anything fishy here and will get their star quarterback on the field again, which is great. Glad Tua Tagovailoa is doing okay, and I pray that the doctors are correct in all of their analysis and interpretations of his injury. Teddy Bridgewater also cleared from concussion protocol. He's still going to serve as the team's backup on Sunday, though, to Skylar Thompson. So, yikes, if you have any Miami Dolphins players. Yeah, I'm not too excited. Speaking of Miami Dolphins, both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are off the injury report. Those are the two that are really going to be impacted by Skylar Thompson. Look, the Viking secondary is pretty bad. Being a Minnesota Vikings fan myself, our secondary is pretty bad. That being said, I really have no confidence Skylar Thompson can torch our secondary. I just don't have that confidence. So I think you have to start both of them, but I'd keep expectations low. Saquon Barkley has no injury designation. He's good to go for Sunday. He was dealing with a shoulder injury. Dak Prescott, with his thumb, he's officially listed as questionable for Sunday, but the team is preparing for Cooper Rush to start. So he will likely return in Week 7 and not this week, but very interesting to see that development midway through this week. I thought I had one more week with him on my IR spot in most leagues, and then, he's back. I have to take him off my IR spot to do literally anything with my roster. So Cooper Rush will start, but Dak Prescott officially listed as questionable. Excuse me, clear my throat there. Aaron Rodgers dealing with a right thumb injury throughout the week. He's off the injury report, will start this week against the Jets. Tyler Lockett popped up on the injury report on Thursday with a hamstring issue. He's been removed from the injury report. He is good to go for Sunday. Cooper Kupp Foot injury listed as questionable for Sunday. I'm going to bank on the fact that he plays. I doubt they hold him out. I'm sure he'll play on Sunday. Jonathan Taylor, officially questionable for week 6. I've heard rumblings, though, that he should be good to go. I've heard rumblings there. Nyheim Hines also questionable. So if you want to go get Deion Jackson, stash him on your roster. I think he's worth doing that right now, at least for the weekend. If you're in a deeper league and have a roster spot for him, I think going and getting Deion Jackson now on the off chance he's the starter this week, as they get the Jaguars, which isn't the worst matchup for Deion Jackson. Kyle Pitts, hamstring, questionable for Sunday. T. Higgins also questionable with an ankle issue. He did practice on Friday, though. So I'm guessing T. Higgins will be out there on Sunday, maybe on a limited snap count. I just, with after Zach Taylor's comments after last week's game of, if it's the right situation, we have a chance to win the game, get him out on the field. Like, so I don't know what that means. We could see T. Higgins out there. I'm going to bank, if he practiced on Friday, I'm going to say that he is out there, but that's something to watch going forward. Raheem Mostert dealing with a knee issue, questionable for Sunday. Yeah, that's tough. We don't want to see that from Raheem Mostert, given his injury history. We don't want to see him pop up on the injury report, especially in a good matchup with the Vikings. So if he plays, I think you have to play him. If he doesn't, obviously you're not playing him. But if he plays in any capacity, I think you have to throw him in your flex spot against the Vikings. Michael Thomas, oh brother, with a toe injury. He is ruled out against Cincinnati. I am terrified of Michael Thomas. Okay, I asked this of Tyler last week. If Michael Thomas misses, will he miss the next 3 weeks? This is week 1. I said he probably would, because we get these injury updates with Michael Thomas. We get nothing else. We just know he's dealing with some sort of lower body injury, right? It's his ankle or his foot. Now it's his toe, right? Like, we don't know much outside of that, but these things seem to keep Michael Thomas out for a prolonged stretch, and the Saints don't want to put him on. We get no clarity around the severity of Michael Thomas's injuries. And this is what terrifies me about him, because he could be out next week, and that would be 4 straight weeks without Michael Thomas. 4 straight weeks without Michael Thomas. This is what we were terrified of coming into the season. Even if he could produce, return to his old self, which it looks like he was going to. Now all of a sudden you're missing him for 4 weeks in a row. 4 weeks in a row. That's lost time in fantasy football. And you probably drafted him to be your flex play most weeks. If not wide receiver 2, if your wide receiver 2 didn't pan out, right? It's so damaging to a team. And this is exactly what we were terrified of. So he is out on Sunday. Jameis Winston also ruled out. Andy Dalton will start for the Saints. And then you have James Conner and Darrell Williams both ruled out for Sunday's game versus Seattle. It's going to be all Eno Benjamin there. I think Eno Benjamin is a great flex this week. I believe his prop over on Underdog is 53.5 rushing yards. That's not a super exciting prop for me, given how poor that Cardinals offensive line is, but it's also the Seahawks. It's at least enticing. But in fantasy lineups, I'd fire up Eno. Here I am, Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith. I'd start up Eno Benjamin this week on your flex spot. And then Cam Akers ruled out on Sunday due to personal reasons. That was news and notes going into the weekend here, brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. We host all of our fantasy football leagues there. If you want to join over 4 million people on the platform playing fantasy sports, you can head down to the link in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. All right, let's get to our starts of the week here now. We have starts of the week. We have some player props I'm going to cruise through. It's going to be a bummer because I really enjoy when Tyler takes over that segment. Tyler, if you're listening to this, man, I miss you. I miss you on this episode. I'm waiting for the props to come up, and I'm not going to do it as good as Tyler. I'm just not. But we got to get through our starts of the week first. And I will give you my starts of the week here, starting with my quarterback. If there's one guy who I think could finish as the overall quarterback 1 on the week, not named Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, right? Those are the top 3 givens. I really think Tom Brady could finish as the overall quarterback 1 on the week this week. And I get it. Tom Brady is not this super sleeper, could he have a top 10 week? I think Tom Brady could be the overall quarterback 1 this week. And that's why he is my start of the week. If you want a good streaming option this week, I like Geno Smith against the Cardinals, but overall quarterback 1 on the week, Tom Brady, I think he has that upside. Pittsburgh secondary, it's an absolute shambles right now. Minkah Fitzpatrick, safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, cornerback, Cam Sutton, Angelo Witherspoon, cornerback, Levi Wallace, cornerback. They are all out. They are all out on Sunday. This secondary is in shambles. And Pittsburgh has not been good against quarterbacks this year. 5th worst pressure rate. And you want to know how you bother Tom Brady is by getting to him. Okay? This defensive line has not been good. They're not going to get to Tom Brady. They're not going to make him rush passes here. He's going to have all day to pick apart this secondary. They have the 3rd most passing yards allowed. 2nd most air yards per game. And they've been allowing the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. Tom Brady, colossal day incoming. Right? Like they could just run all over, but this team doesn't want to run the football. Like they'd rather have Tom Brady throw the ball 40 times a game than give Leonard Fournette 20 rushing attempts. That's how this team works. So colossal day coming in for Tom Brady. I think he could easily finish, quarterback 1 on the week, 353 tutties. I don't think that's undoable. You can even say 350 and 4. I don't think that's undoable for Tom Brady this week. Give me him as my start of the week at quarterback. Running back start of the week. We're just going to keep this clipping along. We're going to keep this episode short and sweet today. Running back start of the week. Here we go. Jeff Wilson Jr. I love Jeff Wilson Jr. this week. I think there's a ton to like about him. He's racked up 100 total yards in 3 of his past 4 games while replacing Elijah Mitchell as a starter for this team. He's scored in each game the past 2 weeks here, and he threw up 20 points last week against Carolina. And Carolina, like not too shabby of a run defense. Okay, like I get the team isn't great, but like their run defense hasn't been bad this year. Now he gets the Falcons, who have allowed both Nick Chubb and Leonard Fournette to just torch them. Both have gone over 19 fantasy points the past 2 weeks. And for how much this 49ers team likes to run the football, like Jeff Wilson is probably one of the most quality starts this week. I like him and Ramondre are my 2, they're probably on your bench right now. And you probably think about putting them in your flex spot every week. I think this is the week you lock them in. You don't think twice about it. Love Jeff Wilson this week. Certainly has top 15 upside. Everything is there for Jeff Wilson, right? I think Kyle Shanahan will just run the crap out of the football. I like George Kittle and Debo this week as well. I mean, I think this could be like a total 49ers domination, right? I think it'd totally be the 49ers just absolutely demolish the Falcons this week. Because this 49ers defense is tough. His Atlanta Falcons offense is not good. His Atlanta Falcons defense is not good. I think it's a big Jeff Wilson day. Just feed him on the ground, let him cook. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me if he finishes top 15 this week. Wide receiver start of the week. I need to take a minute because when I was doing my starts of the week, I wasn't having issues at wide receiver, but this is a feel like last 2 weeks said Carson Wentz. Feel it in my bones. He's going to have a bad game, right? Feel it in my bones. Carson Wentz just isn't going to have a good game. Now this week, I'm feeling it again. In my bones, right? Chris Godwin last week. Feeling it in my bones. Jerry Judy has a great game against the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday. I feel it in my bones. And I can't believe I'm making a Broncos player my start of the week after my tirade against the Broncos earlier this week. Lead the league in sucking. They do. They're awful. I want nothing to do with them on my fantasy teams except for this week. I want Jerry Judy in my lineup this week. Total. I feel it in my bones, right? Like, this is going to be a Jerry Judy game. I've been one of the bigger Cortland Sutton advocates. So the follow-up question right to my start of the week then is like, well, why not Cortland Sutton? Right? Because the Chargers are allowing the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Why not Cortland Sutton? And I've been a big Cortland Sutton advocate. I think he's a wide receiver too this week. So it feels kind of wrong to go against my guy in Sutton, but also I'm not questioning the bones, okay? I'm feeling it in the bones. Here's the thing. The Chargers may have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. A ton of almost 130 of those fantasy points have been to the slot. They've been to the slot wide receiver position. And how do I know that? I use the 33rd team's tool called The Edge. This is not paid promo. Totally me just loving the product they're pumping out over there. Because seriously, it is so helpful to know where fantasy points are coming from on certain points of the field to predict success. Okay. Jerry Judy, despite missing action in week 2 and kind of working his way into action in week 3, he played, far less snaps in those 2 games. He's still top 20 in slot reps this year. So the Chargers have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers. They've only allowed, I believe they're the 20th wide receivers lined up out wide, which is where Cortland Sutton is. So when you have top 5 to slot wide receivers, a guy who runs a ton of slot snaps. Like, I'm just like, interdivisional matchup on primetime football. The Broncos got to go get this game. Okay, they got to go win. They got to get this game. Russ has got to redeem himself. I know that they've talked about the labrum and the shoulder injury and everything, and it sounds like he's getting better day by day. That was a report that came out later this week. It's probably painful to try and put Judy in your lineup. I get it. I totally get it. But primetime divisional matchup that could produce fireworks. There's going to be a total high scoring game between these two dynamic offenses. Okay. I'm thinking Judy could have himself a nice night. I really do. Because while the Chargers' run defense isn't great either, look, Melvin Gordon, Mike Boone, not totally scary. No disrespect to Melvin Gordon. Love him as a player, but just feeling it in my bones. Feeling it in my bones this week. Jerry Judy. I can't believe it, a Broncos player. Jerry Judy started the week at wide receiver for me. Tight end start of the week. Let's wrap up the starts of the week here. I know I said last week that my tight end start of the week was always going to be from here on out, like whoever plays the Arizona Cardinals, because they're just atrocious against tight ends. Except for this week. I'm flipping it up this week because Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals is my tight end start of the week this week. Look, Seattle's currently allowing the most fantasy points to tight ends, and that number is inflated. I need to recognize that. The number is definitely inflated because the last 2 weeks they played TJ Hawkinson, who dropped a 40 bomb on him. And then last week, Taysom Hill just, decided to play running back and score 34 fantasy points against them, right? Like, those numbers are inflated because of that. They're allowing like 137 fantasy points to tight ends this year. Arizona's the next closest at like 97, right? So that number is inflated. I want to acknowledge that. But even before, in weeks 1 and 3, Seattle was allowing the 13th most fantasy points to tight ends. And here's the thing. Ertz is still seeing a ton of snaps and a ton of targets. Okay. He has 10 targets in 3 of his past 4 games. He's played at least 82% of the snaps in those 4 games. And he hasn't scored less than 10 fantasy points all year. He's currently the tight end 4 on the season, if you haven't noticed. No James Conner this week. I'm guessing they're going to keep the ball in Kyler Murray's hands more. They could try and run the ball against the Seattle defense. But again, Eno Benjamin, I don't think they want to give him a full workload. I'm going to guess they keep it in Kyler's hands. I like Zach Ertz a ton this week. Another 10 targets, another 6 receptions, another 50 yards, and a touchdown. Let's throw a touchdown in there. Why not? 17 fantasy points? That might be a little high. 11 fantasy points. Either way, 6 for 50, 11 fantasy points. In the land of fantasy football tight ends, that is going to give you a top 10 finish. So Zach Ertz, fire him up this week against the Seattle Seahawks. Those were my starts of the week. Tom Brady, Jeff Wilson, Jerry Judy, Zach Ertz. I like a lot of teams in red this weekend. Now that I realize that. Buccaneers for Tom Brady, 49ers for Jeff Wilson, Zach Ertz. Got orange in there. All warm tones. Unintentional for the fall season. It's starting to get cold here in Minnesota, so maybe I'm thinking warm, positive vibes. Anyways, beyond the point, those are my starts of the week. Let's wrap out this episode. Look, we're only like 28 minutes into this episode. I love this. We're going to keep this short and sweet for you on this Saturday. Get you all the information you need to know up front. Let's wrap this weekend episode out with some player props brought to you by our friends over at Underdog. We love our friends over at Underdog. Underdog offers what they call Pick'em. It is their form of player props where you can go and take the higher or lower amount on a specific player's prop for the weekend. So for instance, one we're going to be talking about is Lamar Jackson's rushing yards at 59.5. Do you think he goes over that? Do you think he goes under that? Right? That's the concept there. And you can put money down on that and parlay them to up to 20x your money, right? If you do 5 and you hit all 5 legs, you can 20x your money. And they have insurance as well. So if you hit all 5 and you have insurance, you only need to hit 4 of them to win. They also have a thing called Rivals as well, where 2 players are pinned against each other. One player may be given a little bit of a boost to try and even the playing field a little bit. One we'll be talking about Kenny Pickett versus Tom Brady in passing yards, but Kenny Pickett gets a 43.5-yard boost. So if Tom Brady throws for, this is totally unrealistic, throws for 300 yards and Kenny Pickett throws for 300 and, what would be the line there? 300. If Kenny Pickett throws for 360 yards, Kenny Pickett, or 260 yards, Kenny Pickett covers then, right? Because he came within 43.5 yards of Tom Brady, right? It was kind of a wonky way of explaining it, but once we cruise through these, We'll explain it a little bit better. Friends over at Underdog, use our promo code fellas over there if you want to get an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. Lamar Jackson, that's one we're going to start with here. 59.5 rushing yards for Sunday. That's an easy over for me. That is an easy over on his rushing yard prop for me. Because here's the thing about Lamar Jackson, okay? I'm going to pull up his last few games for you, and I'm going to explain exactly why this should be a given. 73 rushing yards in week 2, against Baltimore 2 weeks ago. 107 rushing yards against the Patriots. Against Cincinnati last week, 58 rushing yards. He was 2 yards shy of this rushing prop. And now he gets the Giants this week. Sorry, the Giants don't scare me on defense. This is an easy over for me for Lamar Jackson. I love his rushing yard prop this week. Tyler, I miss you, man. I really wish you were running this segment because you're great at asking and I'm great at just kind of giving the snap response. And now I feel like I have to explain everything. And you can just kind of cover up for me, right? Like, I miss you, man. I miss you on this episode. Lamar Jackson, 59.5 rushing yards. So that is an easy over for me. Breece Hall. Breece Hall's line for receiving yards, 19.5. 19.5 receiving yards for Breece Hall. That's another over for me. I know he hasn't been getting involved in the receiving game as much recently. Okay, only 2 receptions the past 2 weeks. Look, 53 receiving yards, though, against the Bengals 3 weeks ago. Had 12 against Pittsburgh, so he really wasn't too far off from that number against Pittsburgh. Last week, 2 receptions for 100 yards. I'm not going to tell you, he's not going to rip off, 60, 70-yard, receptions this week. But Breece Hall is dynamic, okay? Why would you take the ball out of this kid's hands right now? He is on fire as a rookie in a very okay Jets offense, right? Get the ball in this guy's hands, whether that's on the ground or in the receiving game. So look, I 19.5. I'm going to check and see if he has a combined yardage prop. I'm going to stick with his receiving yards. 84.5 rushing receiving yards is his combined prop. I'm going to stick with the receiving yards prop there. I like 19.5 for Breece Hall this week. Next one, look, I don't need to say much about this one. I got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin here. Mike Evans, 69.5 receiving yards, taking the over. Chris Godwin, 64.5 receiving yards, taking the over there. Again, we went through this earlier in the podcast. Tom Brady's my start of the week because this Pittsburgh secondary is banged up very badly. They are very, very, very low on secondary depth right now. Field day for Tom Brady. So Tom Brady, I believe he's at 289.5 passing yards. If you want to parlay those two, if you want to correlate those two, I think you could take Tom Brady over and take a Mike Evans over. You could take the Tom Brady over and take the Chris Godwin over. I like both of them going over this week. So even if you want to do all three, you can probably do that too. That being said, you can mix and match these however you want. This is not me telling you how you should lay out your parlay. These are just some props that I really like this weekend that I may be looking to parlay myself. So Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both going over this week in receiving yards. Najee Harris. We talk about the overs all the time. I got to give you one that I think is going to go under. Najee Harris at 61.5 rushing and receiving yards, combined rushing and receiving yards. I'm going to take the under on that. I'm terrified of Najee against Tampa Bay this week. One of the best run defenses in the NFL. They're hardly allowing any rushing yards to begin with. Najee has not been getting involved in the passing game. I believe he's gone under this mark 2 of the past 3 weeks. Let me check this mark. Let me check that mark for you quick. Let me check that mark. I've got it right here. Against Buffalo last week, 36 total yards. Against the Jets, 74 total yards. Nothing in the receiving game, though. Pittsburgh, or against Cleveland, 61 total yards, right? Like, I have very little confidence in Najee Harris against arguably the best run defense in the NFL. I'm going under on 61.5 for Najee. I have very, very, very little faith in Najee Harris right now. Last one that I want to dive into a little bit here, Jeff Wilson. His rushing prop is at 65.5. That's too low. That's too low. Because you want to know why? He's gone over that mark each of the past 3 weeks. 75 yards against Denver, 74 yards against the Rams, 120 last week against Carolina. And now he gets the Falcons this week. People, easy over here. Let's Let's not think about it anymore than we have to. Denver, great run defense. The Rams, great run defense. Aaron Donald up the middle. Carolina, again, their run defense is no slouch. Like they are no slouch against the run. 65.5. Easy over for Jeff Wilson this week. Just a few more props to talk about here. Tyler put out a video for us yesterday on our TikTok. He likes both Hollywood Brown and Tyler Lockett to go over their receiving yards as well. You can head over to our TikTok Fantasy Football Fellows over there if you want to watch that video, get all of his thoughts on why he likes those two as well. But let's transition, to some rival picks now. Let's transition to some rival picks because these are fun. I really like these. And there are a few in here that are just obscure where it's like, really? Like, really? Like, that's a prop? Like, I can cash in on that? Yeah, you can cash in on this. Like, Kenny Pickett versus Tom Brady in passing yards. Kenny Pickett gets a 43.5 yard boost. I said Tom Brady could go for 350 and 4, right? That's what I said earlier this episode. Like, Kenny Pickett against his Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Do you really think Kenny Pickett is going to touch 250 this week? Because I think Tom Brady touches 300. I think he does. I think he gets to 300 this week. So then the question you're asking is, can Kenny Pickett get to 250? That's essentially the mark you're looking for. You're looking for 257 to be exact. Do you think he gets to 250? I don't. Not against Tampa Bay. Not a chance in the world. Kenny Pickett last week, I believe, got to he got to 327 last week. Okay. So there's a chance against Buffalo. So Kenny Pickett did sling the ball around a little bit, but I think the Bucs just go absolutely ham in this game. I think they wreak havoc against the Steelers. I could see this being a blowout. I'm going to give Kenny Pickett the 43.5 point boost there. Or not give him the boost. I'm going to pick Tom Brady in that one. I'm going to take Tom Brady in that one. Because even against the Jets, 120. Well, he only had 14 and 13 attempts against the Jets and the Lions. 52 passing attempts for Kenny Pickett last week. I don't think they want to do that to Kenny Pickett. I think that comes down. I think 52 comes down. Yeah, give me Tom Brady over Kenny Pickett in passing yards. I think Tom Brady goes for more than 44 passing yards greater than Kenny Pickett. We just talked about Jeff Wilson in his rushing yard prop. If you don't want his rushing yard prop, here's a gimme. Marcus Mariota gets a 36.5 point yard boost over Jeff Wilson in rushing yards. Here's Marcus Mariota's rushing stats from the past 3 weeks. Against Tampa Bay, 61 yards. Sure, that's fine. I understand, like 36.5 point boost. You're like, ooh, that's scary. 3 rushing yards against Cleveland. 4 rushing yards against Seattle. So I'm going to split that down the middle. I'm going to say 35 rushing yards from Mariota. So then you're asking me, do I think Jeff Wilson hits 72? Well, he's gone over 72 the past 3 weeks. That's what I'm looking at there. So if Mariota hits 35 rushing yards, I need Jeff Wilson to hit 72. I like him over 65.5 already. So yeah, I'm going to take Jeff Wilson over Mariota there. I think Jeff Wilson rushes for 37 more yards, at least 37 more yards than Marcus Mariota does this week. Here's another quarterback, running back one. Some of these are just obscure. You're like, why would they throw these out? Because some of these feel like traps. I think at the same time, we just can't overthink it. Skylar Thompson, 66.5 yard boost over Dalvin Cook in rushing yards. People, let's not overthink it. Do you think Mike McDaniel really wants Skylar Thompson running the football? Do you think they want design plays for Skylar Thompson to run the football? Third string quarterback. Let's get the ball into other people's hands, not Skylar Thompson's. And you want to know what Minnesota? Dalvin Cook, okay? Dalvin Cook has been an absolute destroyer of teams in Florida. Here's Dalvin Cook's rushing yards over the past 3 weeks before I move on to the Florida piece that I want to touch on. I don't know if Cameron and Tyler touched on this earlier this week, but it's important. Dalvin Cook, the last 3 weeks, 94 rushing yards, 76 rushing yards, 96 rushing yards. Why would you let Skylar Thompson run around the field with the football? Like, there is no reason for that. Dalvin Cook. Like, I know Miami's a somewhat tough matchup against the run. Dalvin Cook, when he plays in Florida, against teams in Florida, this was something Will Ragatz of the Minnesota Vikings sent this out. Dalvin Cook in Florida against Florida teams. Here we go. In 2014, when he was at Florida State, He had 9 touches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns against Miami. Again, Florida State in 2014 against Florida, University of Florida, 26 for 172 against USF while still at Florida State. University of Southern Florida, 30 carries, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2015 against Miami, 25 for 269, 3 touchdowns. Still at Florida State against the University of Florida, 29 touches, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, at Florida State against University of Southern Florida, 32 for 329, 2 touchdowns. Senior year, Florida State at Miami, 28 touches, 209 yards, and a touchdown. Florida State against Florida, University of Florida, 29 touches, 179 yards, and a touchdown. And then in 2020, when Minnesota played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 24 touches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Now we get Dalvin Cook versus Miami. 20 touches, 100 yards, and a touchdown this week. Like, why? Skylar Thompson won't rush for 40 yards. Why would you put the ball in Skylar Thompson's hands to run? Why would you? Why? It makes no sense. So give me Dalvin Cook to cover that easily, 66.5. Last one I want to touch on. This one feels like free money. DJ Moore, 37.5 yard boost over Cooper Kupp for receiving yards. Sorry, you probably just heard me snort there a little bit. This is a gimme. 125 yards against Dallas last week. 122 against the 49ers. He had a dud against Arizona. But Cooper Kupp has gone over 80 yards in every game this year. DJ Moore, ready for this? 59 yards. 50 yards. 2 yards the last 3 weeks. Now gets PJ Walker at quarterback. I know Matt Rule's out of there, but come on. You're giving me only 37 for a guy who's going to have 50 more receiving yards? Like, come on. Cooper Kupp. Take Cooper Kupp there. That one is easy. Backup quarterback. Carolina secondary is good, but like, it doesn't matter. It is Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp, and that is it. So yeah, I'm taking Cooper Kupp over DJ Moore there. 37.5 point boost. Doesn't matter. Cooper Kupp's going to go for over 100 in this game. All right, those are some player props and rivals brought to you by your friends over at Underdog. If you want your first deposit, holy smokes! If you want your first deposit matched if you want your first deposit matched up to $100, make sure you use the promo code FELLAS, FELLAS, or use the link down in the description of this audio podcast or YouTube video. Up to 20 extra money on a 5-leg parlay. That wraps out this week's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. If you're watching this YouTube video right now, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for all sorts of daily fantasy football content. We are bringing you shorts. We are bringing you our podcast every single week, right? Hit that notification button, turn those notifications on, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on TikTok. We got such great content over there too. If you want to join a community full of league winners, go join our Chalkboard. You can ask us any trade advice, any waiver advice, any start-sit advice, anything you want. Head over to our Chalkboard down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are watching. This is where I would ask Tyler, do you have anything you want to add? Cameron, do you have anything you want to add? And they would say, keep on keeping on. And I would say, yes, keep on keeping on. We are Three Stooges being dudes. In this case, it is just me this morning, giving you all the latest and greatest fantasy football advice leading up to this weekend of action. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Oh, I'm at Lucas Wentzel on Twitter. Give me a follow over there as well. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you all early next week for a recap of this weekend. Deuces.